Guyana, officially the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, is a sovereign state on the northern mainland of South America. It is bordered by the Atlantic Ocean to the north, Brazil to the south and southwest, Suriname to the east and Venezuela to the west. With 215,000 square kilometers, Guyana is the third smallest country on mainland South America after Uruguay and Suriname. The region known as Guyana or Guyana comprised the large shield landmass north of the Amazon River and east of the Orinoco River known as the Land of Many Waters. Originally inhabited by several indigenous groups, Guyana was settled by the Dutch before coming under British control in the late 18th century. It was governed as the plantation economy of British Guiana until independence in 1966, and officially became a republic within the British Commonwealth of Nations in 1970. The legacy of British rule is reflected in the country's diverse population, which includes Indian, Africa, Amerindian, and multiracial groups. Guyana also has the distinction of being the only South American nation in which English is the official language. The majority of the population, however, speak Guyanese Creole, an English-based Creole language with slight Dutch, Arawakan and Caribbean influences. In addition to being part of the Anglophone Caribbean, Guyana is one of the few Caribbean countries that is not an island in the West Indies. The Caribbean Community, of which Guyana is a member, is headquartered in Guyana's capital and largest city, Georgetown. In 2008, the country joined the Union of South American Nations as a founding member. Etymology: the name Guyana is derived from Guyana, the original name for the region that formerly included Guyana, Suriname, French Guiana, and parts of Colombia, Venezuela and Brazil. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, Guyana is derived from an indigenous Amerindian language and means land of many waters. History: there are 9 indigenous tribes residing in Guyana: the Wai-Wai, Makushi, Patamona, Arawak Carib, Wapashana, Aracuna, Akawayo, and Warao. Historically, the Arawak and Carib tribes dominated Guyana. Although Christopher Columbus sighted Guyana during his third voyage, the Dutch were the first to establish colonies, Essequibo, Berbice, and Demerara. After the British assumed control in 1796, the Dutch formally ceded the area in 1814. In 1831, the 3 separate colonies became a single British colony known as British Guiana. Since independence in 1824, Venezuela has claimed the area of land to the west of the Essequibo River. Simon Bolivar wrote to the British government warning against the Berbice and Demerara settlers settling on land which the Venezuelans, as assumed heirs of Spanish claims on the area dating to the 16th century, claimed was theirs. In 1899, an international tribunal ruled the land belonged to Great Britain. The border disputes persist and no final settlement has been reached. Guyana achieved independence from the United Kingdom on 26 May 1966 and became a republic on 23 February 1970, remaining a member of the Commonwealth. The U.S. State Department and the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, along with the British government, played a strong role in influencing political control in Guyana during this time. The American government supported Forbes Burnham during the early years of independence because Cheddi Jagan was identified as a Marxist. They provided secret financial support and political campaign advice to Burnham's People's National Congress, to the detriment of the Jagan-led People's Progressive Party, which was mostly supported by Guyanese of East Indian background. In 1978, Guyana received international notice when 918 members of the American cult, People's Temple, died in a mass murder-suicide. Most of the suicides were American and more than 300 children were killed. The people were members of a group led by Jim Jones in Jonestown. the settlement which they had created. Jim Jones's bodyguards had earlier attacked people taking off at a small remote airstrip close to Jonestown, killing 5 people, including Leo Ryan, the only U.S. congressman ever assassinated in the line of duty. In May 2008, President Barrett Jagdeo was a signatory to the UNASUR Constitutive Treaty of the Union of South American Nations. Guyana has ratified the treaty. Geography. The territory controlled by Guyana lies between latitudes 1 degree and 9 degrees north, and longitudes 56 degrees and 62 degrees west. The country can be divided into 5 natural regions: a narrow and fertile marshy plain along the Atlantic coast where most of the population lives, a white sand belt more inland, containing most of Guyana's mineral deposits, the dense rainforests in the southern part of the country, the desert savanna in the southern west, and the smallest interior lowlands consisting mostly of mountains that gradually rise to the Brazilian border. Some of Guyana's highest mountains are Mount Hyangana, Monte Cabure and Mount Roraima on the Brazil-Guyana-Venezuela tripoint border, part of the Pacaraima Range. Mount Roraima and Guyana's tabletop mountains are said to have been the inspiration for Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's 1912 novel The Lost World. There are also many volcanic escarpments and waterfalls, including Cayeta Falls, which is believed to be the largest water drop in the world. North of the Rupununi River lies the Rupununi Savanna, south of which lie the Kanuka Mountains. The 4 longest rivers are the Essequibo at 1,010 kilometers long, the Corantine River at 724 kilometers, the Berbiche at 595 kilometers, and the Demerara at 346 kilometers. The Corantine River forms the border with Suriname. At the mouth of the Essequibo are several large islands, including the 145 kilometers wide Shell Beach lies along the northwest coast, which is also a major breeding area for sea turtles and other wildlife. The local climate is tropical and generally hot and humid, though moderated by northeast trade winds along the coast. There are 2 rainy seasons, the first from May to mid-August, the second from mid-November to mid-January. Guyana has one of the largest unspoiled rainforests in South America, some parts of which are almost inaccessible by humans. The rich natural history of Guyana was described by early explorers Sir Walter Raleigh and Charles Waterton, and later by naturalists Sir David Attenborough and Gerald Durrell. In 2008, the BBC ran a 3-part programme called Lost Land of the Jaguar, which highlighted the huge diversity of wildlife, including undiscovered species and rare species such as the giant otter and harpy eagle. In 2012, Guyana received a $45 million reward from Norway for its rainforest protection efforts. This stems from a 2009 agreement between the nations for a total of $250 million for protecting and maintaining the natural habitat. Thus far, the country has received $115 million of the total grant. Regions and neighborhood councils. Guyana is divided into 10 regions. The regions are divided into 27 neighborhood councils. Boundary disputes. Guyana is in border disputes with both Suriname, which claims the area east of the left bank of the Corantine River and the New River in southwestern Suriname, and Venezuela, which claims the land west of the Essequibo River, once the Dutch colony of Essequibo as part of Venezuela's Guyana Essequiba. The maritime component of the territorial dispute with Suriname was arbitrated by the United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea, and a ruling was announced on 21 September 2007. The ruling concerning the Caribbean Sea north of both nations found both parties violated treaty obligations and declined to order any compensation to either party. When the British surveyed British Guiana in 1840, they included the entire Cuyuni River basin within the colony. Venezuela did not agree with this as it claimed all lands west of the Essequibo River. In 1898, at Venezuela's request, an international arbitration tribunal was convened, and in 1899 they issued an award giving about 94% of the disputed territory to British Guyana. Venezuela never has accepted the award by this treaty, and raised the issue again at the time of Guyana's independence. This issue is now governed by the Treaty of Geneva of 1966, which was signed by the governments of Guyana, Great Britain, and Venezuela continues to claim Guyana Essequibo. Venezuela calls this region Zona en Reclamation, and Venezuelan maps of the national territory routinely include it, drawing it in with dashed lines. In 1967, a Surinamese survey team was found in the New River Triangle and was forcibly removed. In August 1969, a patrol of the Guyana Defense Force found an unauthorized military camp and a partially completed airstrip inside the triangle, and documented evidence of the Surinamese intention to occupy the entire disputed area. After an exchange of gunfire, the Surinamese were driven from the triangle. Environment and biodiversity. The following habitats have been categorized for Guyana: coastal, marine, littoral, estuarine, palestrine, mangrove, riverine, lacustrine, swamp, savanna, white sand forest, brown sand forest, montane, cloud forest, moist lowland and dry evergreen scrub forests. About 14 areas of biological interest have been identified as possible hotspots for a national protected area system. More than 80% of Guyana is still covered by forests, ranging from dry evergreen and seasonal forests to montane and lowland evergreen rainforests. These forests are home to more than 1,000 species of trees. Guyana's tropical climate, unique geology, and relatively pristine ecosystems support extensive areas of species-rich rainforests and natural habitats with high levels of endemism. Approximately 8,000 species of plants occur in Guyana, half of which are found nowhere else. Guyana has one of the highest levels of biodiversity in the world. Guyana, with 1,168 vertebrate species, 814 bird species, boasts one of the richest mammalian fauna assemblages of any comparably sized area in the world. The Guyana Shield region is little known and extremely rich biologically. Unlike other areas of South America, over 70% of the natural habitat remains pristine. The rich natural history of British Guyana was described by early explorers Sir Walter Raleigh and Charles Waterton, and later by naturalists Sir David Attenborough and Gerald Durrell. In February 2004, the government of Guyana issued a title to more than 1 million acres of land in the Connection Indigenous District, declaring this land as the Connection Community-Owned Conservation Area, to be managed by the Wai'i. In doing so, Guyana created the world's largest community-owned conservation area. This important event followed a request made by the Wai'i community to the government of Guyana and Conservation International Guyana for assistance in developing a sustainable plan for their lands in Connection. The three parties signed a memorandum of cooperation which outlines a plan for sustainable use of the Connection COCA's biological resources, identifies threats to the area's biodiversity, and helps develop projects to increase awareness of the COCA as well as generate the income necessary to maintain its protected status. The Connection Indigenous District of southern Guyana houses the headwaters of the Essequibo River, Guyana's principal water source, and drains the Kasakaitu, Kamoa, Sipu and Chodika rivers. Southern Guyana is host to some of the most pristine expanses of evergreen forests in the northern part of South America. Most of the forests found here are tall, evergreen hill land and lower montane forests, with large expanses of flooded forests along major rivers. Thanks to the very low human population density of the area, most of these forests are still intact. The Smithsonian Institution has identified nearly 2,700 species of plants from this region, representing 239 distinct families. And there are certainly additional species still to be recorded. Such incredible diversity of plants supports even more impressive diversity of animal life, recently documented by a biological survey organized by Conservation International. The clean, unpolluted waters of the Essequibo watershed support a remarkable diversity of fish and aquatic invertebrates, and are home to giant otters, capybaras, and several species of caimans. On land, large mammals, such as jaguars, tapirs, bush dogs, giant anteaters, and saki monkeys are still common. Over 400 species of birds have been reported from the region, and the reptile and amphibian faunas are similarly rich. The Cornish and Coca forests are also home to countless species of insects, arachnids, and other invertebrates, many of which are still undiscovered and unnamed. The Cornish and Coca is relatively unique in that it contains a high level of biological diversity and richness that remains in nearly pristine condition. Such places have become rare on Earth. This fact has given rise to various non-exploitative, environmentally sustainable industries such as ecotourism, successfully capitalizing on the biological wealth of the Cornish and Coca with comparatively little enduring impact. World Heritage Sites. Guyana signed the Convention concerning the Protection of the World Cultural and Natural Heritage Treaty in 1977, the first Caribbean country to do so. In the mid-1990s, Guyana began the process of selecting sites for World Heritage nomination, and 3 sites were considered: Cayeta National Park, Shell Beach, and historic Georgetown. By 1997, work on Cayeta National Park was started, and in 1998 work on historic Georgetown was begun. To date, however, Guyana has not made a successful nomination. Guyana submitted the Cayeta National Park, including the Cayeta Falls, to UNESCO as its first World Heritage Site nomination. The proposed area and surrounds have some of Guyana's most diversified life zones, with one of the highest levels of endemic species found in South America. The Cayeta Falls are the most spectacular feature of the park, falling a distance of 226 meters. The nomination of Cayeta Park as a World Heritage Site was not successful, primarily because the area was seen by the evaluators as being too small, especially when compared with the Central Suriname Nature Reserve that had just been nominated as a World Heritage Site. The dossier was thus returned to Guyana for revision. Guyana continues in its bid for a World Heritage Site. Work continues, after a period of hiatus, on the nomination dossier for historic Georgetown. A tentative list indicating an intention to nominate historic Georgetown was submitted to UNESCO in December 2004. In April 2005, 2 Dutch experts in conservation spent 2 weeks in Georgetown supervising architecture staff and students of the University of Guyana in a historic building survey of the selected area. This is part of the data collection for the nomination dossier. Meanwhile, as a result of the Cayeta National Park being considered too small, there is a proposal to prepare a nomination for a cluster site that will include the Cayeta National Park, the Iwo Krama Forest, and the Kanuka Mountains. The Iwo Krama Rainforest, an area rich in biological diversity, has been described by Major General Joseph Singer as a flagship project for conservation. The Kanuka Mountains area is in a pristine state and is home to more than 400 species of birds and other animals. Guyana holds 2 of the World Wildlife Fund's Global 200 ecoregions, the Guianan and Guyana Highlands moist forests. It is also home to several endemic species including the green heart tree, Landmarks Street, George's Anglican Cathedral, one of the tallest wooden church structures in the world and the second tallest wooden house of worship after the Todaiji Temple in Japan. Demerara Harbour Bridge, the world's 4th longest floating bridge. Berbice Bridge, the world's sixth longest floating bridge. Caribbean Community Building houses the headquarters of the largest and most powerful economic union in the Caribbean. Providence Stadium, situated on Providence on the north bank of the Demerara River and built in time for the ICC World Cup 2007. It is the largest sports stadium in the country. It is also near the Providence Mall, forming a major spot for leisure in Guyana. Guyana International Conference Center, presented as a gift from the People's Republic of China to the government of Guyana. It is the only one of its kind in the country. Stabroek Market, a large cast-iron colonial structure that looked like a statue, was located next to the Demerara River. City Hall, a beautiful wooden structure also from the colonial era.